So here on Highly Defensive, we like to highlight the greatest defenders of all time. Sometimes those names might not be household names, but if you watch the NBA, they should be. So when discussing the greatest defensive guards in NBA history, two names that constantly emerge are Dennis Johnson, DJ, and Sidney Moncrief. Both were dominant perimeter defenders in the late 1970s and 1980s, known for their relentless on-ball pressure, high defensive IQ, and ability to guard multiple positions effectively. So today, we're going to compare these two legendary defenders across 6 key defensive categories, as we always do. So sit back, relax, and let's see who was the greater defender, Dennis Johnson or Sidney Moncrief. But first, if you enjoy NBA breakdowns and analysis, please subscribe to the channel. We are working for that 2,000 sub mark and can't do it without you guys. Also, check out the GOATcast podcast, streaming live every week with guests and some wild takes. Thank you, and now let's get into this. One of the best ways to measure a player's defensive impact is by looking at the recognition they receive throughout their careers. Defensive awards and accolades serve as an acknowledgement from coaches, analysts, and peers regarding their defensive prowess. Dennis Johnson's defensive accolade: 9 all-defensive team selections, 6 first team, 3 second team. NBA Finals MVP in 1979, largely due to his defense on the Bullets' backcourt. Considered the best defensive guard of his time by multiple coaches and players, known for guarding some of the best offensive players of the 1980s, including Magic Johnson. Sidney Moncrief's accolades: he's an NBA All-Defensive Team selection 5 times, 4 first team and 1 second team, Defensive Player of the Year twice in 1983 and 1984, the first guard in NBA history to win this award, acknowledged as one of the toughest perimeter defenders of his era. While Johnson has more all-defensive team selections, Moncrief has 2 DPOY awards, which is an even greater testament to his individual defensive dominance. Since the DPOY award is typically won by big men, Moncrief's 2 wins are particularly impressive for a guard, so I give the slight edge to Moncrief. While defense isn't always quantifiable, certain key stats help illustrate each player's defensive impact. Dennis Johnson has slightly better numbers in steals, blocks, defensive win shares, and defensive rating, suggesting that he made a bigger statistical impact on defense over his career. Moncrief was known more for his one-on-one defense rather than accumulating steals or blocks, so his lower numbers in these categories don't necessarily diminish his defensive effectiveness. So here, I give a slight edge to Dennis Johnson based on cumulative defensive numbers. Dennis Johnson was arguably the best on-ball defender of his era at the guard position. His combination of size, 6'4", 200 pounds, wingspan, and physical strength allowed him to smother elite scorers. Famously played elite defense on Magic Johnson in the 1984 NBA Finals, forcing the Lakers' offense into discomfort. Could guard both point guards and shooting guards with equal effectiveness. Sidney Moncrief was an absolute menace on the ball, with quick hands, an aggressive stance, and elite lateral movement. Larry Bird once said, "Sidney Moncrief is the best defender I ever faced." Moncrief was quicker than Johnson, which made him slightly better at disrupting smaller, faster guards. Had an intense defensive motor and never backed down from guarding elite scorers. So while Johnson was bigger and stronger, Moncrief was quicker and more tenacious. Given that Bird himself acknowledged Moncrief as one of the best on-ball defenders ever, Moncrief gets the edge here. Dennis Johnson excelled in team defense, reading plays in advance and making smart rotations. His ability to disrupt passing lanes and provide secondary rim protection for a guard was elite. He was often tasked with guarding off-ball scorers like Reggie Miller and successfully limited their impact. Sidney Moncrief had elite anticipation, allowing him to read passes and make quick help rotations. He was relentless in chasing players off screens and contesting shots. While excellent in team defense, he was slightly more focused on individual matchups than Johnson. While Moncrief was excellent at help defense, Johnson's superior communication and ability to guard off-ball players at an elite level give him the edge here. Dennis Johnson could guard 3 positions: point guards, shooting guards, and small forwards due to his strength and length. Excelled at guarding both playmakers Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, and scorers Reggie Miller, Johnson was part of multiple elite defensive teams, including the Seattle Supersonics, 1979 champions, and the Boston Celtics, 84 and 86 champions. Sidney Moncrief primarily guarded point guards and shooting guards, but was also capable of checking small forwards. The defensive anchor of the Milwaukee Bucks throughout the 1980s, leading them to consistently strong defensive seasons. More athletic than Johnson, which allowed him to guard quicker guards better. While both were elite defenders, Johnson's ability to guard bigger players and play impactful defense across different team settings gives him the slight edge. Dennis Johnson locked down Magic Johnson in the 1984 NBA Finals, playing a major role in Boston's championship win. Known for making big defensive plays in crucial moments, including steals, blocks, and forcing bad shots in late-game situations. One of the most trusted defensive players in the playoffs, often assigned to the opposing team's best player. Sidney Moncrief was a tenacious defender in the playoffs and regularly took on the best perimeter scorers. His defense against Michael Jordan in the mid-1980s was particularly noteworthy, as he forced Jordan into tough shots. However, Milwaukee's lack of deep playoff success means he didn't have as many high-profile defensive moments as Johnson. While both were clutch defenders, Johnson's high-pressure defensive performances in the NBA Finals give him a slight edge in this category. So who was the better defender? Both elite perimeter guards. We've established that. But who did it better? While Sidney Moncrief was one of the greatest perimeter defenders ever, Dennis Johnson had a slight overall edge due to his superior versatility, off-ball defense, and clutch defensive performances on championship teams. Moncrief was the better one-on-one defender, but Johnson's ability to thrive in different defensive schemes and guard a wider range of opponents gives him the edge in this debate. But what do you all think? Who was the better defender, Dennis Johnson or Sidney Moncrief? Of course, Moncrief was a two-time Defensive Player of the Year, but when all is said and done, Dennis Johnson, I feel, did a little bit more in his whole career to be called the better defender of the two. So as I said before, I thank Aaron Stark for bringing up this defensive matchup, and I hope you enjoyed this. Two of the greatest perimeter defenders ever, and two guys that should be known by all NBA enthusiasts and fans. I know we often overlook defenders for offense, and I'm just as guilty of it myself, but as the saying goes, defense wins championships, and these guys did their part to help their teams win when it really mattered. So I thank you for checking this one out. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe to the channel. On the road to 3,000 subs and can't do it without you guys. If you really enjoyed it, please become a member and a GC Hooper for only 99 cents. Goes back into the channel and helps us to grow even more. Thank you, and be back very soon with more highly defensive, and check out later this week highly offensive, where we look at the offensive games of Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. Thank you guys, and be back soon.